You're walking 10,000 steps a day. You're in your zone 2 cardio, and you're still not losing weight. Maybe you're even gaining weight. Here's the truth. Walking and zone 2 cardio is amazing for longevity. It's amazing for your heart. But making this one mistake could be the reason why the scale isn't moving. Today, I'm going to break down exactly what happens when you hit a weight loss plateau, the latest research on interval walking, and the one mistake that could be standing in your way from finally losing belly fat. Plus, I'm going to share with you my personal story and how walking created a weight loss plateau for me. In fact, I started gaining weight. I'm going to share with you the step-by-step plan that I followed to fix that and how to avoid the single biggest mistake that women make when it comes to walking for weight loss. All here today on The Chalene Show. I was menopausal, unhappy with my body. I was doing HRT. I was doing all of the things I thought I needed to reduce my body fat and to get my body back. But nothing was working. I started listening to all the health gurus, and most of them were saying
10,000 steps.
10,000 steps.
10,000 steps.
10,000 steps.
10,000 steps.
10,000 steps a day.
Stop running. Kill the HIIT workouts. No more boxing. No more intense, brutal workouts. Do that and you'll reduce your inflammation. The weight will start to come off. It almost seemed too easy. Walking? How could walking help me to lose the body fat when I was so accustomed to doing very intense, long duration workouts? It didn't make sense. But I tried everything else, so I decided to give it a shot. I realized I didn't have anything to lose other than the body fat. So I ditched my intense workouts and just focused on walking 10,000 steps a day. And before long, the weight started coming off. I mean, very quickly, I started losing a couple of pounds. And I thought to myself, okay, if 10,000 steps feels good, I'm not beating up my body, I actually feel restored, I'm loving this, and it's working, I'm gonna increase my step count to 12,000 steps a day. Then I added in neat calories, just making sure that I spent very little time sitting. And I kept tracking my step count. I thought to myself, if I wanna lose weight faster, I'm just going to increase my step count. So I did. I increased it to about 15,000 steps a day. And sure enough, I lost a few more pounds. And again, my body felt great. And I'm sure you can guess where we went next. Yep, I increased my step count then to 20,000 steps a day. And in fact, you might have caught my previous episode where I detailed what I learned from walking 20,000 steps a day. And hitting 20,000 steps a day wasn't easy. It was much, much harder than obviously 15,000 steps a day. But that wasn't the part that surprised me. What really surprised me was the fact that I didn't lose more weight. My progress began to stall. And I noticed that now walking had become kind of like other forms of exercise in the past, where I didn't feel good about myself, or I didn't feel right with the world if I couldn't hit 20,000 steps. And there was a time when I was exercising, when I was doing really intense, kickboxing workouts and running and doing hours and hours of cardio, that if I could only get in like 2 or 3 hours of cardio, I felt like I was going to be a waste of a human being. And I remember some of those old thoughts creeping in, but trying to deny them. It's like, oh no, it's just that this is a habit, and I've set this number in my head, and I just need to hit this number. But I would look at my phone where I track my step count. I wear a ring that tracks my step count. I wear an Oura ring, And I've tried the other rings too. I've bought rings on the TikTok shop. I've done like a whole review on the different tracking rings. And at one point I was wearing 4 different tracking rings because I literally became obsessive about my step count. And I assumed, well, if a little is good, then more should be helping me to, if not lose more weight, at least maintain the weight loss that I had achieved. But again, I hit a plateau and I thought to myself, I can't get in more steps. And I remember having that same thought process when I was in consumer fitness videos and thinking to myself, I can't exercise more, so I guess I'm going to have to start eating less. And I started to play with that idea. I started having those, if I'm being honest, negative thoughts that are so habitual, creeping back into my brain. But then I realized, wait a second, I don't want to go there again. I mean, in that time of my life, I for sure was orthorexic. And if you're not familiar with the term orthorexia, it's kind of an unhealthy obsession with being healthy, where you'll take things to the extreme, where you'll miss out on opportunities, where you forego hanging out with people. You do things, everything centers around either like what you're eating or your exercise. And to be orthorexic, I don't know that it's a recognized mental health condition in the DSM-5, but many people describe it as, again, like you can be orthorexic because you're obsessed with no toxins in your house. And that's something that's healthy. But when you take it to the extreme and it's interfering with your thought process and it's interfering with your everyday average life, that's when it becomes a problem. And I'd like to think of myself as being healed from that, but this recent experience in the last year has taught me that it's always going to kind of be there, and I've got to keep it in check. So what I decided to do was some research and figure out what was going on. Why was I suddenly starting to regress in terms of my progress? Why was it my feet were hurting now? My body was aching. I felt like inflammation was coming back, when until this point, like at 15,000, at 16,000, even at 18,000 steps per day, I felt great. What was it about 20,000 steps? What was it about my step count that had created this challenge? What was it about walking that was no longer allowing me to lose weight? Now, in the past, I would have just doubled down and blamed myself. I would have said, okay, the problem is I'm just not being disciplined enough. I would have blamed myself. I would have got more steps in, and I would have started to eat less. But this girl is level 56. That's what I like to say instead of saying age 56. I am level 56, and I am not going to go back to my foolish ways. So instead, this time I turned to the research. I wanted to understand what's actually going on in my body so I could solve the problem for myself. And you're in luck because I'm going to share everything I learned with you. Is 10,000 steps the magical number? Well, if you haven't already heard this before, the number 10,000 steps was just a random number selected by a company in Japan that manufactured a little tiny pedometer that you could wear on your apparel, wear on like your pants, and every time you took a step or bounced your pedometer, it would track that as movement. As a matter of fact, those old school pedometers, like if you don't want to buy a tracking ring or use an Apple Watch or whatever device it is you like to use for tracking your steps, which is it's a powerful thing to do, those little pedometers, they're very accurate. I tested, I think it's like a $19 pedometer, and it was nearly as accurate as my pretty expensive Oura Ring. I mean, obviously, it's not going to give you the same data. Obviously, it's not going to tell me anything about my sleep. But if you're just looking at your step count, those pedometers are quite handy. But the number 10,000 was just a random number, which is not to say it's a bad thing. Hi, it's me. I'm interrupting me to plead with you, to ask a favor of you, really. It's not even that big of a deal because it's completely free. And that is to make sure that you've subscribed to my channel. Unfortunately, so many of you in the comments have said that you go to check to see if you're subscribed and you swear, you put your hand on a holy Bible and you say, Chalene, I swear I've subscribed to your channel. And then I went and checked and I was unsubscribed. So I don't know if it's an algorithm thing or whatever, but this is my plea to ask you for that favor, to please double check and make sure that you are subscribed. And while you're at it, can I just ask you to like click the like button? Maybe it's over here. Yeah, click that like button and drop a comment and let me know what level you are. We don't call it age anymore. I'm level 56. What level are you? The average American currently gets in between 4,000 to 6,000 steps a day. And frankly, that's just inactive. And we have to shift. I think this is really important. We have to shift the way that we are living our lives. Does your lifestyle support health? Or does it support obesity? If you are sedentary, you are setting yourself up for a myriad of diseases. Our bodies were meant to be moving. That's why I stand when I record my podcast. It's why I try to spend very little time sitting. I try to keep myself busy. And if I do have to hold still for something, I'll try to just sit deep into a squat where my butt goes all the way down by my heels. And if your knees aren't ready for that, I've done a whole episode for you on how to have healthy knees because I've completely changed the health of my knees. And now that's a comfortable position for me to sit. I am much more comfortable in a deep seated squat, like the way you see people in like Asian countries, like the way they just rest is in a deep seated squat. You'll see like 80-year-olds and they just sit with their butt almost all the way down to the ground. And if that hurts your knees, it's because you don't do it often enough, most likely. Anyways, I've done a previous episode helping you to improve the mobility of your knees. And all of that has helped me to just be a much more active person. Our bodies were not meant to just be sitting. And there's nothing worse for your lower back or your hamstrings or your hip flexors, and for that matter, your circulation, than just sitting. We need to move more. And to be clear, you don't have to count your steps, but there's been some pretty remarkable research to show that people who track their minutes of exercise versus their step count, that specifically middle-aged women who count their steps versus minutes of exercise tend to be much more active. They have an easier time keeping off the weight without feeling like they have to do more exercise, without feeling like they have to diet.
Initially, when I started getting in all the extra steps, one thing I had not considered was how much sun exposure I was going to have. So I started getting very serious about researching SPFs. The one that I'm using right now is by OneSkin, and I love it. But here's the kicker. This is, by the way, one of the safest, cleanest SPFs that's available on the market. But use the OneSkin body lotion under it because it has peptides. Then you put the SPF on top of it, and you are locking in those peptides, locking in that moisture. So not only are you protecting your skin, it's like you're treating your skin at the same time. And listen, if you're like me, a lady of the 80s, I spent a lot of time in tanning beds. I don't need any more DNA damage to my skin. I don't need any more age spots. I don't want to look older. I want to look younger. So I want to save my skin. I highly recommend OneSkin. It's amazing. And they are a proud sponsor of The Chalene Show. You get a nice little discount when you go to chalene.com/lotion. Easy to remember. Chalene.com/lotion. Do that combo and you will not regret it.
So let's talk about why is it, whether it's 10,000 steps or 12,000 steps or 7,000 steps, maybe you start to have a little bit of weight loss and then it stalled. Why does that happen? Well, I want to start by sharing with you a story that I think is going to help you to understand this concept. So when I was doing fitness infomercials, one of the very first experiences I had was filming the workouts for a show that was going to be on the air called Turbo Jam. Now, the workout that was in the gym was called Turbo Kick. Oh, and by the way, this is my favorite part of the video because there's going to be someone right now who's going to see this and go like, oh my God, you're the Turbo Jam girl? You're the Turbo Jam lady? It's so funny. So yeah, that was my very first infomercial. And when you're creating an infomercial, they want to make these elaborate claims. And because of the FTC, your claims have to be substantiated. Like you have to be able to show, you have to be able to prove that, what you're telling people this workout can do, it can actually do. And so, the producers wanted to do a test where we would bring in a ton of people into a room, hook everybody up to these devices that would measure how many calories they burn during a 1-hour workout. Okay, now nobody is more excited, more invested in having us have a very high calorie burn than yours truly, right? Like, I want the calories to be like through the roof because I know that's going to help the sales of this workout. So we've got this big room full of people. I am going as hard as humanly possible. Like, I feel like I'm going to puke. I am jumping higher than I've ever jumped. I'm punching harder than I've ever punched. I mean, I'm going like a maniac. Like, it doesn't even look normal because I'm trying to skew the numbers. And I also invited quite a few of my Turbo Kick, Turbo Jam friends who were also fitness instructors because I knew they would go harder than anybody else in the room. And they sure did. And then in order for the study to be legitimate, they also brought in people who had never done Turbo Jam. They brought in people who had, sometimes had done it. People had done it on videos. They brought in older people, younger people, heavy people, thin people, like the whole gamut. At the end of the day, I knew nobody could be going harder than myself and Anarita. Like, we went harder than anybody. Like, we took one for the team. And when we looked at our data, guess whose calorie burns were the lowest in the room? Mine and hers. Why? Because the body is so incredibly smart. Our bodies had adapted. We've been teaching that intense workout every single day for years. We could do it in our sleep. So even though we were pushing ourselves as hard as we possibly could, our bodies already knew how to conserve energy. And as your body becomes more efficient at any exercise, at anything that you're doing, it's designed to conserve energy. Also, keep in mind that anyone who loses weight, doesn't matter how you do it, whether it's on Ozempic or you do it through dieting or you do it just through calorie restriction or just creating a deficit because you're getting in extra steps. When we lose weight, almost everyone, despite what you've heard, is losing a little bit of muscle and fat, which means that now you're smaller. Even if you just lost body fat, you weigh less, which means your body's going to burn fewer calories. Even if you're doing everything else the same. As we begin to get smaller, our bodies don't burn as many calories. Does that make sense? And if you lose muscle, then the rate at which your calorie burn slows down is even more significant, which is why I'm always telling you, you've got to make sure you're putting on muscle. You got to make sure you're eating enough protein. By the way, this is probably the perfect time for me to remind you to click the description below this episode. So you'll see it kind of truncates. You'll see a couple of sentences and you click on the word more, and then you'll see like all the links and more information about things. So I do like a free walking challenge. I do webinars and like free workshops all the time for my midlife girlies. And I would love to have you show up to one of those. They're live. They're super fun. I'll dance on the table. I'll entertain you. Maybe you get to meet my dog, Penelope, who's sleeping behind me. But I would love to invite you to attend one of those. And they're all free, but you've got to click the link below in our show description. All right, back to the show. Here's the other thing that happens when you hit a plateau. If you just try to double down and go harder, your body feels as though it's under attack. And I am positive that's what was happening to me when I was trying to get in 20,000 plus steps per day. On top of that, I was living in an environment that was infested with black mold. So those two things created a hormone disruption that meant my cortisol went through the roof, my estrogen dipped down, my testosterone dipped down, and my body was stressed. And the way our bodies handle stress is by protecting us. And our bodies have decided that the best way to protect us is with body fat. So plateaus can happen for a number of reasons, but one of those reasons is that we can't outsmart our body. Like, our bodies know, like, oh, wait a second, I know what you're trying to do. You are trying to destroy us. You're trying to do more than you were designed to do. So we're going to protect you. We're going to slow down the rate at which you're burning calories. It's called a plateau. But the good news is, science tells us plateaus can be broken, and I'm going to share with you exactly how to do that. And I want to add that there were lots of benefits to walking 20,000 steps, the same benefits that I experienced walking, 15,000 steps a day. Getting in those additional steps, especially when I take it to the place where I'm enjoying myself and I'm not punishing myself, I'm not obsessing about it, it improves my relationships. I'm spending more time with my husband, walking and talking. I'm spending time with friends and doing something that's healthy and outside and taking in fresh air, and I'm not on my phone. So it improves my mental well-being. It helps to reduce stress. It takes stress off of my body. It helps me to stay mobile. It helps me to flush out my muscles when I'm sore from lifting weights. Like, there's so many benefits to walking. I can't even tell you how much I wish I had started a walking program like 10 years earlier. But there are 3 downsides that I don't think people talk about enough. And the first of which is getting to the point where it's an obsession. Like, obsessing about your step count isn't healthy. Number 2 is overdoing it to the point where things start to hurt. If you're walking so much that your body is beginning to break down, that means you're not getting sufficient rest. You're not allowing yourself to recover. And that's going to have a negative impact on your strength training. It's going to have a negative impact on your calorie burn. And you'll start to experience injuries that are uncommon. Like, I love the fact that with walking, I was never injured. But when I maintained those 20,000 steps for 6 months, I noticed and I dismissed. I never thought that it was walking until I cut back and realized I was getting better results, and I wasn't feeling it in my knees and my lower back and my feet. Side note, if I hadn't struggled with feeling like I was getting some plantar fasciitis again and hadn't struggled with like my knees and my back and stuff like that, I probably would have never switched to a barefoot shoe because I think they're so ugly. I still do. I think that they are hideous. I like the look of a big cushioned rocker shoe, but switching to barefoot shoes, game changer. Listen, I'm not here to convince you unless you're having foot problems, ankle problems, knee problems. And I'm not talking about just like a wide toe box. That's probably step 1. But I'm talking about like literally separating your toes. And so I started wearing paluvas. So I either will wear a paluva now or I will wear a shoe with a very wide toe box. And again, I don't think they're cute, but you know what else isn't cute? Being laid up. What isn't cute is having an injury and then you can't exercise the way you want to, and having it work its way up your kinetic chain where your feet are bad, so then your knees start to feel bad, and then your hips start to feel bad. Nah, footwear is kind of everything, and those big cushiony shoes that we think are so great, they're terrible. They're terrible for your feet. And I know I've been wearing them for forever, and I still think they're really cute, but they're no good for your feet. But the third thing that I think we need to talk about is how difficult it is to get in that many steps. Like that's just very unrealistic. Unless, of course, you're a nurse working the ER or you're part of a wait staff, then I guess you're getting in a massive ton of steps. But for most of us, be active. Moving around without having to be speed walking to get in your extra steps is a great way to maintain your weight loss. But if you want to break that plateau, you don't want to just maintain. You're like, no, I've had a few extra pounds creep on, and you want to take that weight off. You want to break that plateau. Here's what you need to understand. Walking is just like any other form of exercise. And you've heard me talk about the concept of progressive overload over and over and over again. You've also heard me talk about periodization. I apply periodization to the way that I eat. I apply periodization to the way that I strength train. And I've always applied periodization to the way that I do my cardio. And for some reason, I just never thought that I would need to apply those same principles to walking. But of course we do. So what do I mean by that term? What I mean is shifting things, changing things so that the body doesn't have an opportunity to say, oh, okay, I know exactly what you're going to do today. I know exactly how many steps you're going to get in. I know exactly how fast you're going to walk. And I know exactly how much approximately you're going to eat and how much you weigh. And so I'm going to slow your calorie burn down. If your body can't predict, it can't get into that routine, it doesn't create homeostasis. Think of homeostasis as like the thermostat in your house. And once you set it at a certain number, it doesn't go up or down. It stays at that number. And your body has a number too, and it wants to keep you as close to that as possible. So even though you're increasing your step count, your body's like, okay, we're going to do our best to keep things the same. So the more predictable you are in your exercise routine, the easier it is for your body to create homeostasis, that plateau. So how do we fix that? Change. We just change it up. So here's what I want you to try. I mean, just think about when you first started walking, like 10,000 steps or, whatever the number is that felt like a reach for you. You probably thought to yourself, well, this is kind of hard. You wake up the next day and you're like, oh, my legs are kind of tired. They feel heavy. You're kind of proud of yourself. It is a challenge. And that's when we experience weight loss because it's new. Our body is challenged, but eventually it feels like second nature. And that's when homeostasis kicks in. Does that mean it's time for you to go back to your HIIT workout or to pick up running again or turbo kick? Maybe, but if running is your new love, I want to share with you what I've done. And it has been a miraculous change, not just to help me break that plateau, but also to change things up, because just walking more steps is kind of boring. I wanted something new, something exciting. One of the first principles that I applied was interval walking, which is probably exactly like what it sounds. And interval walking is so easy. It's just simply changing your pace at different intervals. So I love doing 1 minute and 1 minute. So I'll do 1 minute of a run walk and then 1 minute of walking. Or you can do 1 minute as fast as you possibly can and then 1 minute at your normal pace. You can do any form of interval. You could do 2 minutes at a steep incline and then 2 minutes at a lower incline. It's just changing it up so that your body has to work much harder and then kind of go back to a steady state. A 2014 study by the College of Sports Science found that interval walking at a regular pace and then a increased pace, reduced insulin sensitivity and burn more fat than steady state walking. Another very simple way to vary the challenge of walking is by adding a walking vest. But keep this in mind. If you're always wearing a walking vest, your body's going to get used to that. So what I've started doing is I'll wear my walking vest for 8 weeks and then I get rid of it. And then I switch to interval walking for 8 weeks. And then I switch to walk, run for 8 weeks. It's just changing it up. And I'm sure you're probably asking yourself, could I change it up every other day? Yeah, you could totally do that too. But to avoid a plateau, you can change things up every 2 weeks, every 4 weeks, every 8 weeks. The key, in fact, you could change things up every couple of days if you wanted to. The key, however, is making sure that your body never truly gets accustomed to what you're doing. You're trying to make sure that your body can't predict exactly how to conserve or expend energy. You're keeping your body guessing. Most personal trainers agree that in terms of cardiovascular training, introducing something new every 2 to 4 weeks is a great way to avoid a plateau. And frankly, you could even go as long as 12 weeks. If you haven't reached a plateau, if you're still seeing results, well, then your body is still responding. Other ways to create variety are changing your terrain, walking in sand, walking on grass versus walking on a treadmill. All of those things kind of change the way your body has to respond. And certainly the more uneven the surface, the more challenging it is for your body, the more challenging it is for all of the small muscles in your ankles and your knees and your feet and your quadriceps. Introducing just about any kind of change, even walking sticks. Now, you've probably seen people with walking sticks. I've seen people out on trails with walking sticks. I live here in Miami Beach, and I see people walking around the city with walking sticks. So, of course, I was really curious, why are people using walking sticks? What's the point of it? Well, studies show using the walking sticks happens to burn more calories. And I think it forces you to use your arms. You could add ankle weights. You could add wrist weights. Now, if you're wondering if wearing a weighted vest actually improves your bone density and if taking it off would mean that you would not get those benefits, you should probably check out the episode I did dispelling a lot of the myths around weighted vests. Listen, I'm still a big fan of the weighted vest. But spoiler alert, there isn't any science that I am aware of. Drop it in the comments below if you've seen a recent study, but there aren't any studies that conclusively show significant improvements in your bone density from just wearing a weighted vest passively. The improvements come when we're doing impact, like so jump training or doing something where you're actually you're creating impact while wearing the weighted vest. Does that mean you shouldn't wear a weighted vest? No, absolutely not. You should still wear one, especially if you're trying to break a plateau. I think that's one of the easiest ways to break a plateau is by wearing a weighted vest. And heck, if you're completely used to, your body's become accustomed to however heavy your weighted vest is, maybe it's 8 pounds or 15 pounds. Another way to break your plateau is increase the heaviness, increase the weight of your weighted vest. So if you've had success walking, it's helped you to lose weight, it's helped you to maintain weight, but recently you've hit a plateau and maybe you've even started to regress and put some of that weight back on, try some of these alternatives to change things up and break that plateau. If, however, you're someone who's never lost any weight from walking and you're trying to figure out why everyone else is and nothing's happening for you, remember, exercise can only take us so far. It's so important. It's going to help us to age powerfully. It makes us feel confident. We're meant to move our bodies. I want you to be stronger. It changes the way you look in your clothes. It changes your confidence. But it's not going to change your weight unless we're creating a deficit. So you've got to be honest with yourself and say, like, okay, I'm walking more, but am I eating more? Am I eating the wrong kinds of calories? I know everyone today is really excited about the tremendous success that we're seeing a lot of people having on GLP-1s. It's not injecting the medication. It's not taking a supplement that helps people to lose weight. Those things do, however, both natural supplements, hormone replacement therapy, and even a GLP-1, those all do help to balance our hunger hormones, which might make you less hungry. But it's not making you lose body fat. What helps you to lose body fat, what helps you to lose weight is consuming fewer calories. So, just real talk, right? So you can do all the walking in the world, but if you're not in a deficit, you're not going to lose weight. That's the bottom line. By the way, if you want to know more about like the personal stuff, who I am, my husband who's right there on the couch, a little bit more behind the scenes, some things that are just, I don't know. I don't put them normally on my podcast because they're too personal. They're very, very juicy. A lot of curse words, a lot of like fun tea, nothing that has to do with hormones or like helping you live a better life. But if you want to be entertained and have someone keep you company, I would love to invite you to try Patreon. Right now, there is a special going on where you can try it 7 days for free. I'll put the link below, or you can just go to chalene.com/more, and we would love to have you. So we have to figure out why you're not in a deficit. Is it because your hormones are out of balance? Is it because you're not tracking? A lot of people have no idea. I know it's true for me. I track my macros and my calories maybe once every 6 months. That works for me. Anything more than that, I think I'll probably get obsessive. But I know for some people, they have to track all the time, like every day. Otherwise, they're going to underestimate what they're eating. They're going to go over their calorie limits. And frankly, the smaller you are, the shorter you are, the less room you have for error. And as we age, does our metabolism slow? It does, but very little. Not as much as you might think. It's about adding the muscle, staying active, and if you want to lose that weight, we've got to create that deficit.